Welcome to In the Garden. I'm your host, Master Gardener Joyce Hochsprung. Today we're going to talk about plants for full sun. And I sent out a request on Facebook asking people what topics they might like me to cover, and that was one of them. So we're going to talk about that. Now, full sun is generally considered 6 to 8 hours per day. So considering that we have 12 to 16 hours of daylight during our growing season, you know, we tend to think of an 8-hour day like a work day. Oh, it's got to have 8 solid hours. Not necessarily. It could have 4 in the morning, 4 in the late afternoon, or kind of interspersed in there. And luckily, for people that are looking for pretty much full sun plants, there are tons of them. Now, I suspect that a lot of times when people ask about that, what they're really wondering is, what are some drought-tolerant ones? There are some. Now, drought-tolerant doesn't mean you can just plant them and forget them. They still need some care, and that first year especially, even the most drought-tolerant plants, their first year they're going to need watering, regular deep watering. Not just a shallow little sprinkle, but a good deep soaking. And probably mulch for a lot of them. So we're going to try to address all that in this episode. Back here we have a Heliopsis, and this is a newbie. Actually, it was a seedling that I missed weeding out from that bed over there last year. So it's quite young yet, and it got a little big before I got it moved, so it suffered some transplant shock. So how tall it's going to get still remains to be seen. We'll know more hopefully next year. I love Heliopsis. They bloom, they start blooming in June, and with just a few times deadheading them, they bloom through till frost. I don't know of any other perennial that does that. They like sun, although they'll tolerate a little shade, but they do not like to dry out. Sometimes red aphids can be a problem with them if they get really too dried out and too stressed, because aphids and other bugs always attack stressed plants first. So keep them watered. They like it moist, but I think, like I said, I don't know of any other perennial that gives you as long a bloom time as Heliopsis does. So this is a seedling, unnamed. Don't know if we can see when it first opens. The petals, there's a little kind of orangey, reddish tone around the center base, and that fades and gets lighter as the bloom matures. I do have some other Heliopsis in another bed that it came from, but what caught my eye last year, and I'm really glad I missed weeding it out, was it bloomed for me last year, just a few blooms, but it was the size of the bloom is what really caught my eye, because I'll show you what it's seeded from in a little bit here. Okay, here we have another Heliopsis. This one is called Prairie Sunset, and this is the parent to the seedling we just showed you. It's a little stressed this year. It's kind of on the side hill. I probably like a little more water than what I've been giving it, so we're going to try to do a little better at that, give it a good soaking. But this is another one that likes full sun, but like I said, the Heliopsis do not like to dry out. They get kind of unhappy about that. But as you can see, the flower size, and these are just starting to open, is much smaller than that seedling. So that's why I was really liking that seedling. And as long as we're down in this part of the garden, we'll move over. Here's a lily called Fire Truck, an Asiatic. Again, this one was just divided last fall, so it's much shorter than it would normally be. Usually that one's more like this. It's a fun one. Kind of hard to find. I think it's an unregistered variety that a grower out in Washington State or Oregon, I forget which, grew these. She never registered any of hers, but she did sell. This is probably, well, I shouldn't say favorite because every lily that opens is my favorite at the time it's opening. So, but this one is, I have to look, Napa Valley. And I just, like I said, I mentioned I love these with that kind of candelabra effect. But again, the lilies are quite drought tolerant. You notice how this one has a smaller leaf? So the smaller the leaf, generally the more drought tolerant the plant is. Now remember, these are generalizations, not written in stone for every single thing, so always do your research. This is a catmint, Nepeta. Nepetas are great for dry sites, long bloom. It won't be too long. I see the top ones are fading, so I'll go through and I'll just clip them back a little bit, and some of those side shoots will bloom. They'll be smaller, but it will bloom for quite a long time. I don't know what the variety is. Years ago, someone brought this into the plant sale, the Garden Club Master Gardener plant sale on a Friday night, and plopped the box down and said, "Here, you can have this." So I'm like, oh, great, just what I want, potting more plants. But I brought it home and I potted up the divisions, and she said it was Walker's Low, and I knew it wasn't Walker's Low by the leaf, because that has a much smaller leaf. And so I potted it up and we marked it cheap. Well, when we went to go, I had one little sprig about this big around that I tucked in a little tiny 2-inch pot, and I thought, oh, you look too sad to sell, I'll just leave you here. And it sat and it dried out, and it, you know, I'd forget to water it and it would be flopped over, and I'd come back and I'd water it and it would perk up. So eventually I thought, okay, you know, you've hung on this long, you deserve a chance. So I stuck it in the ground here, and that was probably 15 years ago. I've divided it a few times, but it just is a great bloomer. Gets pretty much full sun over here. And we're gonna go back around the other way over here. So, okay, over here we have a few more lilies. Remember I said they're quite drought tolerant, and this is on a fairly steep slope. So they have excellent drainage here. In fact, keeping enough moisture on this, especially up at the top, is difficult. These in this bed are LA lilies, which means it's a longiflorum, which is an Easter lily, crossed with an Asiatic. And they have very strongly up-facing blooms. This one happens to be called Kiss Me Kate. Over there, I think might be rodeo. I've been trying to find the tag for it and digging around, and I'm going, I remember I had one called rodeo. I'm not sure if that's what that one is over here or not, the paler pink. Could also be Hello Dolly, I'm thinking, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Hello Dolly. And I have several others still to open. So the Asiatics, usually it starts out in the spring with the Martigons, which tend to like shade, so we're not really featuring them today. They'll grow in sun, but they're happier with at least some shade. But they are also fairly drought tolerant, as most bulbs are. But it goes with the Martigons, the Asiatics, and the LAs, and then you transition into the taller, the crosses, the Oriental Trumpet crosses, the OTs. Some catalogs will call them tree lilies. Yeah, there's no such thing as a tree lily, and they claim they rebloom. They don't. They just have secondary buds that open, so there is really no rebloom. That's just a marketing ploy. So don't believe them when they say that. Over here we have just good old Autumn Joy sedum in need of division. Pretty sure you all know what that looks like in bloom. Over here we have Baptisia, and it, you know, it takes on shrub size. Because it has a taproot, it's quite drought tolerant. I don't know if you can see it. There is a little one growing in here that is not thriving, and these two are in danger. I was going to try to dig it out, but knowing how much work moving a Baptisia is, I think I'll just wait and see what happens, and these two may just crowd it out and do it in. And I think that there's just a slight little valley there, so I think it probably was not getting the drainage it needed. But life in the garden, those things happen. The alliums, well, this, except for this drumstick allium that's just coming into bloom up here, are pretty much done blooming. I kind of like the seed heads, tend to leave them. Occasionally I've been known to spray paint them just to throw people off, to see them looking like they're blooming in July, but we'll see if I have time to play with that or not. But it's kind of fun. That, of course, leaving them also means I have lots of baby alliums popping up. Up here is the drumstick allium, and behind it I have butterfly weed, Asclepias tuberosa. This is the variety Hello Yellow. Generally, it's the most common one is orange. And I've tried 3 times to get this plant established, trying it in various places in that other bed at the top of a slope, built up a little berm for it because this one is drought tolerant. It does not like it too wet. So I put it up here at the top of the hill where the water doesn't really reach very much. And so far so good. I planted it last year and I was thrilled to see it coming up this spring because I went, yay, I finally didn't kill this one. So this is it. Quite drought tolerant, a monarch plant, although I don't see any cats on here at the moment, but maybe soon. Up here, also at the top of the slope, you can see this has kind of a bluish gray, narrow leaves. This is Boltonia, or sometimes called thousand flower aster. This has got a really pale pink one. I believe there's a white one as well. And this is just a happy little plant up here, and it's very dry environment and has done quite well. I mean, I do occasionally water it. I go, oh, yeah, I may should give you a drink, but especially in a year like this one where it's forgotten how to rain. But this is kind of a fun one too, and I'm guessing it may not get as tall this year. It's usually more like this, so it stands up above these, and of course the lilies will have been cut back somewhat by then, but by the time this blooms. This is another type of Liatris. I need to put a tag in here, and at the moment I can't remember it, but it gets normally quite tall. This is only its 3rd year here, so first year it was just one little stick. Last year it bloomed beautifully, and I have a picture of it having like 12 monarchs all along feeding on one stem. It was really cool. Did get a little wonky, so I'm debating. Stems kind of went, whether that was wind or a heavy rain, I'm not sure. So I've been debating whether I should stake it or not. I'm kind of keeping an eye on that one. And then over here and back in there I have gray-headed coneflower. That's another native, fairly drought tolerant. It'll hang on through some pretty tough times. Blooms with these long yellow rayed petals, and I don't know why they call it gray-headed coneflower. I think the head actually looks more green, but hey, whatever, I didn't name it, so. Okay. If you like hydrangeas and you only have full sun, stick with the panicle hydrangeas. Hydrangea paniculata. This one is Little Lamb, and that one. And over here we have Pinky Winky, the taller one. It's starting to form some buds there. We have another catmint here. This is Sweet Dreams, I think. Yep, Sweet Dreams. It's kind of a pink one. This one actually prefers a little bit more moisture. Not wet, soggy, but that's why I have it down more towards the bottom of the slope, and that rock there kind of holds a little more moisture in. And down in front of that, we have Betony, or kind of the same family as lamb's ear, but this is the small leaf variety. It's not fuzzy. It's a little more tolerant of wet conditions than lamb's ear is, than the regular lamb's ear. Like I said, here that's just on a rainy year, it's just, I might as well just, say goodbye. So I just don't even bother with it here anymore on my soil. But this one is Humelo or Humelo. Not quite sure how you pronounce that. This is another grass, tufted hair grass. This is one variety. Right over here on the other side of the goat's beard is another. And yeah, the goat's beard's getting a little more sun than it should. Everything here is getting a little more sun than it normally would, but that's the way it goes. So this is kind of a fun one, and I put it kind of near the bottom of the slope because this is a grass that it's not as drought tolerant as some of the others, but it is somewhat shade tolerant, which is why I put it here, which is kind of amusing right now. Okay, down here we have another Heliopsis. Now remember I said this doesn't like to dry out. If you look close, you can see a little 4-line plant bug damage on the leaves, but as it grows, we'll pick off a few of those. And this one is a short one. It only gets to about 18 inches tall. So if you think, oh, I don't want a big tall one, this one is Tuscan Sun. And I think there's probably another one I read about, I can't remember the name, that has come out that's also a shorter one. But there are short ones out there, so you just have to do a little hunting, read the tags, read the information, do a few minutes of research, and save yourself some pain down the road. It's so much easier now than when I started. I didn't have Google in my pocket when I started, so everything had to be looked up either at the library or someplace. So Google's a wonderful helper for gardening. Down here, this is a new Salvia I just put in this year. It doesn't look real great yet. This is Plumosa. It gets the big feathery heads, I hope. I also hope that this will stay dry enough for it. If I get a wet year, I may have to move it. We'll see. So we'll keep our eye on it. But for now, I figure this year we'll get it off to a start and give it a little size before we worry too much about that. So we'll be watering that. And then we're going to go over and take a look at some other sedums and some hens and chicks. Okay, I have some hens and chicks up here. A lot of people say their hens and chicks only die, they winter kill. It's not the winter, it's too wet. They like it on the drier side. I have them here next to this sidewalk, which is basically, if you've ever put in paver sidewalk, you know there's a lot of gravel underneath there and sand, so they like that excellent drainage. There's a few more over here. These guys are going to bloom this year, and once they bloom, they die, and the babies will move in. I need to divide these apparently. We've got kind of a reddish one there, and I have a few more in another bed, some of the bigger varieties. These are oldies, have no idea what they are. Okay, here we have another yarrow or Achillea filipendula. This one is Coronation Gold. Main difference is this one is a little more gold than Moonshine is more yellow, the one we looked at earlier. And this one has bigger heads and it's taller, but again, it's a clump former, does not run. So, you know, a lot of times we think of geraniums, the hardy geraniums, as being for shade, but they will also tolerate quite a bit of sun. This one is, I mean, this is a south exposure, so this gets sun all day long, and it does just fine here. Here's another Veronica. I inherited this one, so I'm thinking it's either Red Fox or Giles Van Hee. And here we have some more just bearded iris. This is the variegated form, and the flowers aren't the showiest, but they do smell like grapes, so there's that. And just the foliage is neat to look at the rest of the year. It's not just plain old boring. Again, the lilies are fairly drought tolerant. This one I was only about a year old. Trying to think what this one is. I don't know it yet. Pink Flight. So, and I really like the height on this one. And remember too, whether it's lilies or daylilies or whatever, they're probably not going to reach their full height the first year. They do need time to settle in just like any other perennial, whether it's daylilies, iris, they have to have some grow time. So last year this one was only about this tall, and this year it's getting to where it should be. Oh, we do have a daylily open here today. I think this is Dragon Rider. I just put this in. It will get taller, but it's not going to be a super tall one. Probably about, I think if I remember right, this one gets to about 36 inches or so, so about 3 feet. But again, not the first year. We have more flax. Oh yeah, almost forgot. More of the grasses. Okay. This is Little Blue Stem. This variety happens to be Blue Heaven. And Little Blue Stem is great if you want drought tolerant. Once you plant it, keep it watered well for the first maybe 2 or 3 weeks or a month. And after that, you can almost walk away from it. It just is a great, great plant. Okay, this is a switchgrass. Now remember, switchgrasses are late to wake up. They don't start growing until the soil is nice and warm. So a lot of times people will plant it and the next spring they go, it died. Probably not, it's the last one to wake up. Cloud 9, and it probably won't quite reach that this year, but usually gets about this, and it's probably my favorite switchgrass. It's just, the seed heads are just billowy. Hopefully we'll get at least something from it later this fall where you can see a picture of it, but this is a fun one too. Likes it on the, once it's established, fairly drought tolerant. May not get quite as tall without water, but it will still hang in there once it's established. So keep that in mind, that once established rule. You can't just plop them in the ground and walk away. Okay, here's a few more hens and chicks. These are in, I'm going to pull some of these guys because they can't be there. But this is some more hens and chicks. Again, excellent drainage. This is another tiny little sedum. Not as steppable as acre, but just as drought tolerant. And this one I believe is Hispanicum. I use that in my strawberry pot. And one back there that I'm going to have to look up because I can't remember the name with the white flowers. It might be bubblegum or jelly, I think jelly bean maybe or something like that. But it's been a few years and the tags are so little. This one is not new. It's called Mariana. But I love the kind of blue and burgundy coloration here. That one I've had a few years. But it just makes that nice tight little mound. And then down here we have one called Lime Zinger. And unfortunately this one might need to be moved because it's opening up too much, getting too much water when I water some of the other things. But that's a fun one too. That's a newer one. It's only been out a few years. Sorry. Okay, right in here I have a few newer sedums. This is an area right in here that the sprinkler heads don't quite hit. And I was struggling with stuff and I go, okay, it's crummy soil in here. Yeah, we might as well just put in something that will be happy here. So I took out the phlox and stuff that were in here. And so far I am really liking this one called Wildfire. And as I said, these were just planted this fall. This is one called Touchdown Flame. Again, you've got the, darker foliage. Pool Party is one of my favorites. I had to rescue that one last fall because it was getting too much water. But I just love the flower heads on it. They have the pink with just a little bit of green in there. Over here, we have one called Blade Runner. And I just love the leaf on this. It's such a neat leaf. This one is called T-Rex. Again, the leaf interest is a little different. And this one I think is called Thunderhead. So, as I said, they're still babies. Just put them in late last fall. So we'll see what they do. I'm hoping we can get them to fill in here. I might add a couple more in here yet. Maybe put Lime Zinger up here. So, and with that, I hope we gave you some ideas for things for full sun and that you enjoy it, and not everything full sun is necessarily drought tolerant, but a lot of things are.